Our episode for today is sponsored by Organic Living. I had the opportunity to try out organic moisture absorbers a few months ago, and I am completely hooked on them. I've put them in every area of my house and my car where there's even a hint of moisture. My favorite part, they're all natural, so I don't have to worry about the kids or the dog getting into them. They're perfect for under sinks, in closets, holiday storage bins, dressers, and pantries. And since they're made of non-toxic minerals, you can use them virtually anywhere. With 100% satisfaction guarantee, you have no reason not to try them out. You can visit organicliving.com to learn more and place an order. And as always, we'll put a link in our show notes. Welcome to episode 20 of Jacksonville Momcast. Today, our guests are Julia and Jess from Casa Design Consulting. Julia and Jess combine their organization skills with training in the Montessori method to help parents create a home that is calm, organized, and functional for parents and kids. In today's episode, they chat with us about Casa Design and the services they offer, and they give us some tips to help parents curb kid clutter. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Jacksonville Momcast, a podcast dedicated to real stories for real parents. Each episode, we'll chat with local Jacksonville moms and cover topics to help you navigate mom life on the First Coast. Thanks for joining us as we tackle all things motherhood and more with a focus on the 904.
Welcome to season 3 of Jacksonville Momcast. I am so excited. Our first guest is Vernetta Stewart. So Vernetta, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Yes, so I am Chef Vernetta and I am 43 years old. I'm born and raised in Jacksonville, so I've been here all my life and I come from a really big family. I always say my grandmother had 17 kids. So I have 9 aunts and 8 uncles on my mom's side. And so I work, I'm married. We don't currently have children at this time. And I mean, that's a little bit about me and my family and my background with Jacksonville.
I love it. So you mentioned that you're a chef.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about being a chef and a little bit about how you got started in the culinary world.
So funny story. So my mom, and I always tell this story, my mom was a cook for 43 years at the same job. She didn't go to school to become a chef, but that's what her profession was. And she did it for 43 years. So growing up, I always knew how to cook. Of course, she taught me how to cook. I spent time with her in the kitchen. But I never thought I would go into that area. So when I finished high school, I went into banking and finance. So I did that for 12 years, but I could always cook. So I remember moving into my apartment and I was the friend that had the apartment. And so all my friends would come over and I would cook and I just kind of enjoyed it more and more. And working in a corporate setting, I had never been to a potluck before working in a corporate setting. So working in a corporate setting and being at the potluck, it was always you would bring in stuff. So I would try different stuff, learn different stuff from different employees, my coworkers and all of that. And I started getting very adventurous with what I wanted to make for the potluck because it was almost like, what is Vernetta going to bring? What is Vernetta going to bring? So I started getting adventurous. And then the Food Network was popular. I was watching that and I said, you know what? I'm going to culinary school. And one day I was on vacation from my job and I was passing by, it was FCCJ at the time. And, they have a great culinary program. I pulled in, didn't even know I was serious. And I was enrolled in culinary school. And so at one point I was working full time at Citibank. I was going to culinary school full time and I was doing my culinary intern full time. So that's how I got into the culinary field.
I mean, that is a wild story. I love it. And so I'm super excited about this interview because you wear a lot of different hats. And so one of the things you do is you have your own business.
Yes.
A culinary business. So tell us a little bit about your business and about some of the services you offer.
Yes. So I have a catering private chef business. So I do corporate catering. I do weddings. I don't do a lot of weddings. I will do weddings, but I maybe do 2 to 3 weddings a year. But I do a lot of corporate functions. I do a lot of private events. And that just consists of mostly special occasions. So if there's an anniversary or 60th birthday, something like that, I do catering for that. And then I also do just some training. And I do a lot of training for the senior community. As far as like how to eat healthy. So the healthy part of it is a long story, but I'll make it short. I just in family history, I had a lot of family members pass away from stroke and high blood pressure. So I'm 4 feet 9 inches. I'm very short. And at my heaviest weight, I was 260 pounds. So I started blood pressure medicine pretty early at 28. I was doing all those jobs and interning and all of that. And so I saw a lot of my family members pass away from high blood pressure, or pass away from stroke from high blood pressure. So I kind of changed my lifestyle, eating habits, was able to get down to 178 pounds naturally. So I found a passion for also cooking really good food, but also healthy. So taking some traditional staples and kind of cleaning them up a little bit. So I try to show people how to do that as well within my business.
And I think that is such an art to be able to take traditionally like those comfort foods, those, like you said, the staples that everybody knows and loves, and to really like slim them down a little and like still keep them tasty, but have them be a little bit better for you.
Right.
I don't think anybody's ever going to eliminate those foods from their diet if that's something you love. So you might as well be able to eat it healthy.
Right, exactly. And it's comforting when you have something that you traditionally, like I always say, my mom would make chicken and rice growing up, and I loved her chicken and rice. I can't duplicate her chicken and rice to this day. I don't care what I do, how I do it. It just does not taste like hers. But, you know, I'm sure it was a lot of the white rice and heavy. So how do I, and it's probably why I don't taste the same now that I think about it, because mine's a little cleaner. So those are some things that I offer in the business.
And you mentioned, you know, cleaning up your recipes. So let's talk a little bit about the moms out there with picky eaters. I think that that's something a lot of parents struggle with. You know, I had one toddler who was a picky eater and one toddler who was a great eater. And now they're almost like swapped as teens. Yeah. And so I think even if you start with a good eater, like at some point in your child's life, you're going to encounter some picky eating issues. So talk to us a little bit about, you know, kind of conquering some of those picky challenges.
You know what I learned, and it's so difficult, you know, not having children myself, but working with children, because I also do little cooking videos with kids. Children's palates are so much more advanced now than they were years ago. So we think about them as being picky, but they are, and I agree, because they can be picky, but they're developing their palates. So you may have a child and you put an avocado in front of him and he's like, oh no, I hate it. Then you put an avocado in front of another child and they love it. I say just take the time to see what they like and what they don't like. And also, you can get you have different food charts that they have online. Give it to your children and say, tell me what you like and what you don't like, what you absolutely love and what you absolutely hate. Keep a journal of that. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but keep a journal of that. And then, you know, when you're going to prepare, you have a better idea of what they want and what they don't want. And then you also have that to refer back to over time, because like you said, some of their diet choices change. And you can say, okay, well, at this phase, he liked this. And at that phase, she liked this. So then you can also take some of their favorites when you know what both of them really like and don't like. You can almost be able to create one meal, because now you know what both of them like at the same time, so that you don't get stuck like, I got to fix chicken for him and fish for her. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And that was always my philosophy with even to this day, I always try to have at least one thing I know everybody will eat on the plate. And then everything else is kind of like, well, try it. Or I know it might not be somebody's favorite, but that's okay. I love your perspective on meals like us growing up, and because we're about the same age, and our kids growing up. I had never thought about that. And you are 100% correct, because some of the foods my kids have been introduced to and eat regularly I never was exposed to as a child.
Right. And it amazes me because sometimes I had to do a private dinner for a family not too long ago, and she had 2 little ones. And so she said, we want to do steak for me and my husband, but and I said, okay, she said, we want to do steak for me and my husband and my 2 girls. And I believe they were like 5 or 6 or something at that age. And I said, okay, well, I can do little petite fillets for them. And she said, oh no, they like ribeye. And I said, okay. I said, so a 5-year-old knows that they like ribeye steak, right? And then, it's also talking to them. I'm like, well, why do they like the ribeye? And I realized that sometimes ribeye has a little bit more fat on it. It's a little bit more juicy. So it may not necessarily be the ribeye, but just because their palates are so different now, it gravitates towards that. And we weren't exposed to a lot of stuff, in our era because it really wasn't there. And honestly, you couldn't afford it. Like you ate a lot at home, you went to the grocery store, you came back, as, everything has evolved is what I'm trying to say. As everything has evolved, so has their palates. Because as some children, I'm just shocked at some of the things that they want.
Yeah, when you think about like access to different types of food, I grew up in Miami, which you would think would have a very diverse market, and I think about just like cheeses I used to eat as a kid, which was like gross, like American cheese and, some better stuff, but not anything fancy. And then I think about like going to Trader Joe's, which is right around the corner with my kids. And there's like 1,000 different kinds of cheeses from all over the world. I never remember seeing stuff like that when I was little.
Yes, and let them experiment in the kitchen, and also, let them have those things that they like that you might be like, oh, do you really want that? Let them have it because I find that they will grow out of it. And it's so funny that you said the American cheese, because till this day, I grew up with American cheese, and till this day, I still love American cheese. As a chef, I've had great cheese. But it's certain things that in my grits, I love grits, but I want American cheese in my grits. I do not like cheddar cheese in my grits.
That's so funny. That is so funny. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about meal prep. I think people, not just moms, but everybody, it's like one of those things, meal prep. I want to try to be prepared for the week and not be scrambling on what I should make. And I think it differs for some people. Some people like to pre-make. I mean, I know people that have crock pot meals all made and in the freezer and ready to go. And I know people that are like, at least have their basic grocery list for the week. And that's what they cook off of. What are some of your tips for prepping for a meal as a family to make it easy to kind of throw together that healthy meal so we're not, always relying on takeout?
Yes. And I'm happy you asked, because that's something that I have to do because I move so much. And if I don't meal prep, that's when I eat terrible because I'm like trying to grab stuff quickly. My advice is just to set a day for it. My day is typically Saturday morning or Sunday. I know that, a lot of parents have a lot of activities with their kids. So whether it's sports and things like that. So it may be a day that works best for you, but also don't try to do it all in one day. And I think that's what becomes kind of frustrating or make it hard to do. So for instance, if I'm going to meal prep, I'll do it on a Saturday or Sunday, and I may do enough meals to get us through Wednesday or maybe Tuesday. And then Wednesday, I may go in there and do a couple of more meals because it almost seems like it's a daunting task if I'm trying to prep for Monday through Saturday or Monday through Friday. So break it down and then also get some of your staple items like your chicken, your vegetables, your fruit, and already have it in the house. So when you get ready to do it, you can do it. And try for busy moms, try to do it on the morning before everybody wakes up. And I know it seems like doing it early in the morning seems like a challenge, but that way you beat the rush of kind of feeding the kids or feeding your husband. You can start it early, and then by 10 o'clock, your meal prep is done for a few days.
I think that's a great suggestion. And I think that so many people, when you think meal prep or you hear the words meal prep, you think like meals for 2 weeks or meals for the month or soups for the next 3 months made.
Right.
And I think that breaking it down like that and setting a goal, maybe I meal prep for 3 days and then, we eat out one day and then I meal prep for 3 more days. Right. That's such a good suggestion.
Keeps you from having to freeze it, because a lot of times you like it better when it's fresh. If you have to freeze it and pull it out and then let it thaw and reheat it, that almost becomes a task. So if you do shorter amount of days, it's still fresh and you just have to reheat it and go.
Absolutely. So tell us, what is your favorite food? You touched on a couple of them, but what's your all-time favorite food to prepare?
So I love to prepare seafood. And it's funny because as we mentioned earlier, with the palates changing, shrimp used to be my favorite food. And I could eat shrimp every day. And now I'm funny about shrimp. I don't like them as much. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I can't even explain it, but I love seafood. So I love more like fish. I love to do salmon. I love sea bass. Those are some of like my staples. I eat beef, but I try not to eat a lot of it. If I do, so my favorite steak used to be a New York strip steak, and now I like a filet. So that's kind of switched a little bit, but I just like food that's clean, in a sense that it's not too much stuff added to it. But I'm kind of versatile, and what I like changes. Sometimes I'll come home and I'll say, my husband, he loves anything that's like Mexican. So I can make tacos. I can make my chef fancy dishes and plate it all up, and he'll love it. But let me make a quesadilla. And he thinks I like hung the sun. So what I want at a certain time, it changes. It really does. And I've noticed that a little bit as I've gotten older. Of what I like to eat. And then I have a week where my body just craves salad. And I might just do a different salad with a different protein. And then I have those weeks where I crave sugar. And those are those tough weeks. So I don't know. I maybe just because I'm a little bit older, but what I would say is seafood. I love Mexican. I love to do stuff like that. And then I love traditional Southern food also. But it's a cleaner version when I make it now.
And I think when you mentioned you didn't like shrimp, that's almost like blasphemy here in Jacksonville.
And I used to eat shrimp. And you know what I think it is? When you go back to like the food quality, food is so different now, and it's like, if it's a Mayport shrimp, I love it. But it's like, I think sometimes they'll put a sign that says Mayport shrimp and it's not Mayport shrimp. And I can almost tell the difference. And I'm like, no, I don't like that. So I think the quality for me has changed on certain things. So I have to find that to really enjoy it now.
That's a good way to say it. You got to find your good Jacksonville shrimp. So one of the other things you do is you are the culinary director for the Ronald McDonald House here in Jacksonville. Tell us a little bit about your role with the Ronald McDonald House and what exactly you do as the culinary director.
Okay, perfect. So how I ended up getting to the Ronald McDonald House, I was a chef at Ponte Vedra Inn and Club, and I had been a chef there for about 8-9 years. And so I wanted to give back to the community with food. I'm like, this is what I do. This is my wheelhouse. How do I give back? So I went to a couple of organizations in town and just couldn't really find a fit. So the chef, our executive chef at Ponte Vedra, said his wife is the director of a children's hospital in Maryland. So she said, well, tell Vernetta to try the Ronald McDonald House. So I went there to volunteer, and I volunteered 2 years. And in the process of like, right when I got there to volunteer, they were doing an expansion. Mm-hmm. And so they put in more of a restaurant style kitchen. And then they knew that I was a chef and said, hey, how would you consider coming to work for us full time? And so I remember going back to my chef at Ponte Vedra and saying, hey, they offered me a full-time job. They want me to run this program. And so it kind of came at a perfect time. And I know we'll probably get into that, but it came at a perfect time because I was trying to slow down the pace a little bit. At Ponte Vedra, I was working 15, 16-hour days, and I would work, 6 days a week, sometimes busy seasons, but that's what comes with the territory. So I'm definitely not complaining, but wanted to slow down a little bit. So moved over to the Ronald McDonald House. And so my role there is, pre-COVID, most of the meals were done by dinner groups. So we would have companies that would come in and they would use it as team building, things like that. They would come in, do dinner for the families, and I would pretty much supervise, help them with their menu selections, help them nutritional wise, things like that. Then COVID happened. When COVID happened, we could no longer take volunteers because of the immune systems of the children. So the program changed. I then became the full-time chef in addition to the other roles. So I would cook all the meals for the family. So last year, just for instance, I did over 20,000 meals by myself at the house. So what a day looks like for me is going in, checking emails, still communicating with the groups that have supported us over the years, because you don't want to lose that interaction. So talking with them, letting them know as soon as we can welcome you back, I'm here. Building out food costs, tracking that food expense, also making sure that we have balanced meals for the children because they are, going through a treatment for a chronic illness. So that's kind of what it looks like for me. And then when we started to slowly welcome groups back, because it looks different, just making sure that they're food handler trained for safety and sanitation reasons and things like that, in addition to getting the meal prep done.
And for those, you touched on it just a little bit, for those who don't know, tell them a little bit about what the Ronald McDonald House does, like how they service families and who utilizes them.
Yes, so we are there for children who are being treated at local hospitals for cancer is one of the primary treatments, but it's also a cancer, trauma. It can be a premature birth, so they can stay at the Ronald McDonald House while their child is being treated. And so it's kind of like a home away from home, but also gives them access to be very close to the hospital that their child is being treated at, so that they can get back and forth to the hospital without having to be so far away.
Perfect. Thank you for that description. And I would tell any of our listeners, if you want to know more about the Ronald McDonald House, we'll put a link in the show notes. They always have a wish list up on their website. They are an amazing charity. They, the families pay minimum or nothing depending on what they fall for their level of service to stay there. And like you said, they really try to make it a home away from home while your child is receiving treatment. So they're just a great organization.
Thank you.
So let's shift gears a little bit. And in addition to having your own business and being the culinary director at the Ronald McDonald House, you also have a nonprofit. I'm going to tell you I need a nap after this interview because I'm just exhausted with all the things you have going on. So your nonprofit is called Footprints of Angels. So tell us a little bit about it, about your nonprofit and kind of how it came about.
Okay, so, and I know, and I will say, I feel like when I hear it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I do so much stuff. So, I think about that too, but how Footprints of Angels came about, I know, and I'm so great to be on your podcast because it's talking to, moms and then also I'm sure women who want to become moms. So that was what it was for me. I always knew as a child, I wanted to be a mother. But didn't know, how that would come about. So like I said, at the beginning, I went into banking when I graduated high school and I did that. And then I switched careers. So when I looked up, I was in my late 30s and I'm like, I want to be a mom, what am I going to do? And I remember being in culinary school and my teacher saying, women will leave the kitchen faster than men. And at that time, I'm 26, right? So I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, you all have the babies, or you nurtured the home. So you would want to step out of that area before, a man would. So then think about it. Well, in late 30s, me and my husband ended up getting pregnant. And then I had a second trimester miscarriage. So I was 22 weeks at the time when I went into labor, had a perfect pregnancy up until that point, no issues, nothing, out of the ordinary, just woke up one morning and started going into labor. So at that time, I knew when something was so close in your hands and we had a son, I was able to, I didn't host him because they had me on so much medication, but my husband did. And to see him and to just spend that time with him before we had to bury him, I, knew then that I really, really wanted to be a mother. So I wanted to shift gears. And that's kind of another reason kind of led me to the Ronald McDonald House to kind of slow down a little bit because my doctor at the time was saying, you're older, we if you want to be a mom, the clock's ticking, we kind of got to get this going. And so had that situation happen, then got pregnant again and had a miscarriage, then got pregnant again and had a miscarriage. So now I'm going into my 40s and my doctor says, well, you've been able to get pregnant, but you have not been able to sustain the pregnancies. Maybe you should see a reproductive endocrinologist to see what's going on. Went to the reproductive endocrinologist, had all the great testing done, and found out that I was born with a deformity in my uterus. And I did not know. And so I tell you, the diagnosis gave me healing, but it also made me mad. It gave me healing because I always felt so guilty. I felt like, did I been wrong? Did I eat? Because I'm a chef. I'm moving all the time. Did I do something wrong? And just playing it over and over and over and over in my head. And so that kind of said, well, that was something that you couldn't control. But then the anger kicked in because I'm like, if I was born with this, why am I just finding out in my 40s? Because I would have been taking care of this. So I was born with what they call a septated uterus. So I had a septum in my uterus. So that's a piece of tissue that kind of separates the uterus. It doesn't prevent you from getting pregnant, but what it does, if the egg implants too close to it, there's not adequate blood flow. And then as you get further in the pregnancy, your cervix will begin to open earlier. So went in, had surgery to have that removed, had that cleaned up. And then in the testing, I found out that, all of my stuff, like my egg quality and stuff, was good for my age. And I do air quotes as I say that, good for my age. And so wanted to move forward. And moving forward, by that time, I didn't know anything about fertility treatments or infertility. That was nothing that I was familiar with, had heard it, but wasn't familiar with it. And then that started my journey. So in that journey, tried a few cycles of fertility treatments, and then none of the cycles were successful, but I would still get pregnant naturally, like after a cycle. So that was funny. And in going through that, I knew that there were women like me, and I talked with my husband about it, and he said, well, if you start a nonprofit, you're going to have to share your story. Are you ready to share your story? And I thought about it for about a year because I didn't know if I was ready. And then after one of the last rounds, I said, I got to share it. So I started the nonprofit so that I could help women like me get past the stigma or the shame of it, of not being able to conceive. Because as a woman, you feel like that is what you're supposed to do. Like, I am supposed to get pregnant, give birth, and have a baby. And when it doesn't happen that way, you almost go inside yourself, and it can do terrible things to your mind and just your thought process. So I started the nonprofit to help. The other reason was, luckily, my husband has really great insurance. So it covered a lot of our treatments and medication. Fertility is not covered by most insurance. So there is a lot of women that I've been able to help in the nonprofit who have gotten loans, took out their 401k. Because when you want to be a mother, I don't care what you go through or what happens, it does not go away. The feeling does not go away. So the nonprofit was started, and I can talk tons about it, but I won't. But the nonprofit was started to help, women like me get past that, and just be able to know that the results of a pregnancy test don't define them.
I was just going to say, I love that your husband that was his response, that if you're going to do it, you're going to have to put yourself out there, because he's right. I think that, have you found that through the nonprofit, there are a lot of women who have gone through something similar that you may have not discovered that had you not put yourself out there? Yes,
there is still a lot of women. And this is one of the tough things in the nonprofit that's hard. Because it's such a sensitive topic, there are a lot of women who are still not comfortable with sharing. And so being the founder of a nonprofit and people that support us are like, if I give you the funds, where are they going? I need to see proof of this. But there are still so many women who will not even give a testimony of just the help because they're afraid to share that story. So we had to rework that in the nonprofit at the beginning, and you don't want to force it because it is a sensitive subject. But we say, if we're able to help you, we need to show who we help. So can we at least, get something saying that? But you find a lot of women that still are not comfortable with talking about it, sharing it, feeling like it's something that they did. And I do like the fact, though, that it's being talked about more. And that now that it's being talked about more and more people are discussing it, some people are opening up about it, of sharing it, but there's still a lot of people that don't want to talk about it. Because it's even times where having a nonprofit, and I tell the ladies, I'm still on this journey. I still don't have a baby. So I'm still in the journey with you every day. I live it every day. And so sometimes having a nonprofit, I have to step back a little bit too, because I get so many stories, and then I have to kind of get my mental back right, and say, I understand, but let me just pull away a little bit because I'm still in that journey myself, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And it's so admirable of you to put yourself out there because you want to help people. So essentially you're sacrificing a little piece of yourself every time you have to put yourself out there, but your end goal is to help other women that are like you. So I totally can see how that can, really kind of suck more out of you the more you have to put out. Talk to us a little bit about exactly where the money you raise goes.
Yeah, so what we do, we have several areas that we fund for the nonprofit. So every year we have a fertility hope grant. So a woman can apply for treatment for the cost of infertility treatment. So IVF, IUI, egg freezing, they can apply for that grant. Any funds that we disperse goes directly to the doctor's office. We don't give any money to the person that's requesting it. We give it directly to the doctor's office, and we get verification. So they can, apply for that. It's some stipulations. So we do ask, like, are you, do you have insurance? Are you currently being treated? How far do you, when we give you this money, how far along do you plan to use it? Because we try not to go over a year with it, because there's so many women that need help. It's like, if you don't plan to use it for 3 years, then there's someone else that could possibly use that as well. And then also what we give is based on how much we raise. So that's one area. We also help with burial expense of a infant or a newborn or a stillbirth. So if a mother goes into labor early, has a stillbirth, we help cover the cost of that burial expense, goes directly to the funeral home. We also cover the cost of fertility therapy. So if you are, just have to talk to someone, get through it, we will help cover the cost of that. We also help cover the cost of alternative treatment. So some women don't want to do IVF. I do acupuncture myself, been doing acupuncture way prior to learning about my journey. And acupuncture has some good benefits for infertility. So we help cover the cost of fertility treatments as well. And then we do throughout the year, COVID changed up some things, but we also do seminars, and we try to offer those free educational seminars in regards to reproductive health. My big goal also with the nonprofit was to touch younger women, because you think at 20, you're not thinking about getting pregnant, and so you may have some issues, because a lot of people think it's older people that have infertility issues. No, there are women in their 20s that get married and don't know that they have a condition, and then they're trying to get pregnant and then something happens. So when I went and did the testing, I'm like, these are simple tests that insurance pays for. If you can get these done at a younger age and know where you stand, then you can. So one of our recipients of the grant last year was born. It's called MRKH. I hope I did the letters right, but she was born without a uterus. So she will never be able to physically carry a child. And so what happened, she was like 12, 13, and she hadn't got a cycle. 16, she hadn't got a cycle. So her mom took her to the doctor, and they found out that she had that condition where she did not have a uterus. And so that was my first time hearing that. And I looked it up and I was like, wow. And so at that time, they didn't have money where she can afford to have a procedure to have her eggs retrieved. So the doctor was saying, because of the condition as well, your quality of eggs deteriorates faster. So you want to get your good eggs and go ahead and freeze them. So if you want to get pregnant later on in life, you can, but you would not get pregnant. If you want to have a child later on in life, you still can, but you would still have to have a surrogate. So she was well deserving of the scholarship. She's 23. I was just finishing college and said, I'm not trying to get pregnant or have a baby, because she can't. I hate that I keep saying that, but she could not actually have a child on her own, and she wasn't looking to do it right then. But later on, getting married with a husband that she wanted to, so she used the funds to have an egg retrieval to have her eggs froze. So real big on just reproductive health for young women. Go get the simple test. If you don't have insurance and we can help you get those tests, get the test done so you know where you stand, if it's something that you need to work on, because we have to start preparing our bodies. Some people, it happens really quick, but sometimes you have to prepare your body months in advance before you even try to conceive. So like to focus on, and those are the seminars that we offer, educational seminars. So I can talk about it forever, so I won't.
That's okay. That was a great rundown. And I love that you guys focus on such a wide range of infertility subjects and issues, because it's not a one size fits all. Oh, you can't get pregnant, you need IVF. Like, I think that when people hear infertility, that's what they think. And it's just so, like you said, it affects young people, older people. There's just such a wide range of what it entails.
Yeah.
And so what have you learned coming from the corporate world and then owning your own business and then also working for a nonprofit? How has been the process of starting your own nonprofit? And what are some things you've learned about as you went along?
Ooh, that is so loaded. I don't like to ask for help, or, I'm very self-sufficient, right? I don't know. And it's not a prideful thing. It's just that I'm used to just doing stuff. So with starting the nonprofit, the hardest part for me is asking people for support, to support these women and understand why it's so important that they get the help. So that's been a challenge for me, just because there'll be times where, because we're a smaller nonprofit and we got started 2 years before the pandemic. And then we were just gaining a lot of momentum. And then we would so every March we would have a brunching for babies. So we would do a brunch and we would have auction items. And that was one of our fundraisers. And then October, we would have a gala. And that was for Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month in October. And that was our big fundraiser. Well, then when the pandemic happened, we couldn't do those. But I felt like I enjoyed doing those because I think with my chef background, I give a service and then I get money, and I think with the nonprofit, I'm not really giving anything, but I'm asking for money. And so I found that so hard to do. And so when we would have the events, I was like, okay, because I would do the food. I'm like, okay, well, I'm cooking the brunch. So I'm doing the brunch and they're going to pay for this. And then we can help the women. So that was one of the tough parts, for that. And just learning that sometimes if you are, and this is with anything and nothing against anyone, if you're not impacted or affected by something, it doesn't necessarily mean a lot to you. It doesn't mean that you disregard it. You just may not fully know about it. So it's like, why should I support this if this hasn't impacted me? So that's just one of the things that I learned. And I learned a lot about myself. My friends and everyone's like, you're so strong. And I feel like I learned that I was, but I also learned that it's okay to be vulnerable as well. And a lot of times I think when you have a nonprofit or you see the business or you have a business, the way that the world is set up now and social media is only the good stuff. You're only posting the great stuff, and there were times, with my own journey, and I have this nonprofit that I can help 100 women, but there's sometimes I wake up in the morning and we have 5 angel babies, and there are sometimes I miss them tremendously, or I may have a dream and I may see one of their little faces in my dream, and when I wake up in the morning, I'm a mess. I got to kind of get my tears together. So I had to learn that it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to be strong in both aspects of it. So, it's not always, and same with business. With business, as a chef, you're going to always post that beautiful plate that you plated up really pretty and it looks really nice. But what about that dish you tried and it was like, I don't know about that. Like you're hesitant to post that. So I think just learning in everything, be transparent and genuine. And I think that's what brings success.
That's such a tough lesson to learn. It really, whether it's in your personal journey or your business journey, or it's hard.
Yes.
And so if there's one thing you could tell women or a woman who was dealing with infertility right now, what would you tell them?
I have so much. Let me narrow it down. As I said before, the stick does not define you. A positive pregnancy test does not define you. Don't put your worth into that, right? We want to see a positive, but if it doesn't happen, that doesn't mean any less of you. Also, there's nothing to be ashamed of. I learned that, women, and I think most women know this, when we're born, we get a certain amount of eggs. And by the time we hit puberty, those eggs are dwindled down to this. And by the time we get to they're this, right? Whereas men, they're kind of making sperm all the time. Right. So our chances are a little bit different than their chances. Right. And that's something that we did not create. So we can't change that too much. So don't beat yourself up. And then the main thing that I would say is seek therapy. It's okay. It's okay to talk to someone if you can't process it all, and then also, if I think about it, with your husband, just enjoy your husband. Enjoy your husband. Enjoy them in a sense that when you're going through fertility, everything becomes so regimented. Like you get a calendar and it tells you what to do from A, B to C. So you tend to lose a lot of the excitement in your marriage because you're following by that calendar and you become a stickler to it. It's okay to just let go and enjoy your husband, enjoy your spouse, and also just understand that they do understand. It's different for them. And I had to learn that, like, if I'm crying and he's not crying, well, why is he not crying? Well, it's not that he's not crying, because he may have moments that he goes and cries to himself. But as a man, their job is, or their role most of the time is to protect you. So they want to protect you. They want to protect your feelings. They want to protect your body because their part of the process is fairly easy. So they want to protect, how many injections you have to do, how many medications you have to. So it's not that they're not supportive or that they don't understand. They just want to look out for you. So enjoy your husband, enjoy your married life, enjoy your time together. They understand. Enjoy that part of it. And then also just don't put your self-worth into that. And if you need to talk to someone, it's okay. There are some really, really, really great fertility therapists that specialize just in that, of how to get past your emotions, your feelings, and all of that stuff to kind of just sort through it.
That's some very, very wise words. If somebody wants to help support Footprints of Angels or donate, what's the best way for them to get involved with you?
Yeah, so they can go to our website, which is footprintsofangels.org, and they can see what we're doing. They can read about our mission. They can also see the women that we've helped, and there's a place where they can go on there and donate to as well.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about, you said you're a native, which I feel like Jacksonville is like very split. It's either like you've lived here your entire life or you just moved here in the last 5 years. My husband's also a native, and he married a non-native. So what is your favorite thing about living in Jacksonville?
Oh man. I like the beach. I like being able to be around water. I like that we're kind of close to like other different areas. Like you can get down to Miami, you get to Tampa, you get to Orlando, you can go to Disney. I like that part of the city that we're close to a lot of stuff. I love the beaches that we have waters, around us. I don't know. This is all I know in a sense as far as living. So there's a lot that I think is just great. Honestly.
I agree. I think Jacksonville has so many great things, and we love the beach.
Yeah.
So before we wrap it up, I also wanted to mention you're involved with Feeding Northeast Florida, and they recently wrote an article about you. We'll put a link to it also in our show notes so our listeners can go read that. But tell us a little bit about what you do with them.
Yeah, so with Feeding Northeast Florida volunteering. So I work at the different mobile food pantries, passing out food to the community and anything else that if they would ever need help with it, I'll jump in and do it. But that's how I got involved with Feeding Northeast Florida. And then my mom, she's retired, but she runs the food pantry for her church for Feeding Northeast Florida. So we're just kind of involved with them because I love their mission. Also, I love what they do. So food and children are like my thing. And so just being able to help the community, to help food deserts, because there are so many people who don't have access to food or quality food, so forth. So what they do is just amazing. And the amount of food that they help people with, and it's good food, the amount that they do, you just wouldn't believe the pounds and pounds of food a year that they help the community with.
And we worked with them, my kids' back when my kids were in elementary school, we partnered with them with the Blessings in a Backpack program, and they helped sponsor that for the kids. And you're right, and this was a tiny elementary school, and the amount of food that we gave out every week with their support was just unbelievable that those kids got to take home every single week. We packed out food with the help of Feeding Northeast Florida. So that's another amazing organization. I love that you're involved with all the food organizations.
I love the fact too that they reach out to local farmers and things like that, to help get food out to the community. Fresher ingredients. I really just love what they do too.
Yeah. And especially since COVID hit, I know there's been a lot of families that have struggled, and food access, especially in the beginning, was just such a big deal. How they distribute has shifted a little in the last 2 years, but they've still just do so much to reach out to people who need it.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you'd like to add before we close up for today?
No, I just want to thank you just for the opportunity to, come on your podcast and be able to share with Jacksonville a little bit about me and what I do, and then also the nonprofit things that are just close to my heart. If I can get the message out there, and my goal is always just to help, in any way. I truly have a servant's heart, and to be able to share, to help someone else means a lot to me. So just thank you so much for having me and being able to share with the Jacksonville community.
And thank you so much for being on. Your heart is so big. You've been such a great way for us to kick off our third season. Thank you, Chef Vernetta. And we will put links of everything we talked about today, her nonprofit, some of the organizations we talked about in our show notes. See you next time.
That's it for today. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Jacksonville Momcast. For more information about what you've just heard, check out our show notes and find us on Instagram at Jacksonville Momcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and know someone who should tune in, please subscribe and share it. We look forward to you joining us on our next episode of Jacksonville Momcast.